The rhythmic thrum of the helicopter blades was a morbid heartbeat against the dense silence of the unknown jungle. Inside, a collection of faces, pale and drawn with a dawning horror, peered out at the impenetrable green wall of trees. They were the chosen participants, their lives abruptly derailed, their fear about to become a spectacle in a game they never consented to play. Below, a crude scar on the landscape marked the arena. Rough-hewn logs starkly illuminated by harsh floodlights that pierced the humid gloom formed a fragile barrier. Masked figures in black tactical gear stood like silent sentinels, their weapons adding a chilling punctuation to the scene. One by one, the kidnapped individuals were ushered from the helicopter, their feet sinking into the soft, damp earth. A young woman clutched a torn photograph. A middle-aged man trembled visibly. An elderly scholar stared with a detached disbelief. Their stories were varied, but their present reality was terrifyingly unified. A deep, resonant roar echoed from within the enclosure, a sound that vibrated in their chests and spoke of raw, untamed power. A massive silverback gorilla, its coat a deep, shimmering black under the artificial lights, moved within its confines. Its intelligent, watchful eyes surveyed the newcomers with a primal intensity. Near the landing zone, half hidden in the undergrowth, lay a discarded cell phone. The cracked screen displayed the now ironic meme: 100 men versus 1 gorilla. It was a stark reminder of the absurd seed from which this deadly reality had sprung. Somewhere, beyond the jungle's edge, unseen patrons were preparing for their grim entertainment. The masked guards, with sharp prods, forced the petrified group into the crude log arena. The massive silverback gorilla watched their entry with an unnerving stillness, its dark eyes assessing the sudden influx of terrified beings into its confined space. Then, with a roar that ripped through the humid air, the gorilla charged. It was a terrifying display of raw power. Its massive fists swung with brutal force, swatting away the defenseless humans. Screams of agony and terror filled the enclosure as bodies were flung against the log walls and trampled underfoot. The initial onslaught was a horrifying ballet of predator and prey. In the luxurious control center, miles away, the scene unfolded on a bank of high-definition monitors. One of the impeccably dressed figures leaned forward, a frown creasing his brow. "Hold on," he murmured, adjusting his glasses. "Aren't there supposed to be 100 of them?" Another figure, reclining in a leather chair, chuckled softly, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. "My dear Alistair, you wound my sense of dramatic license. No one said it was 100 at the same time, did they? The spectacle is the thing. The attrition rate merely adds to the piquancy." A ripple of dry laughter went around the room. Back in the arena, panic erupted. The humans scrambled, a desperate mass of flailing limbs and terrified faces. Some tried to scale the slippery log walls, their fingers scrabbling for purchase, only to be dragged back down by the sheer force of the panicked crowd or the swift, brutal attacks of the gorilla. In its furious assault, the gorilla, seemingly without intent, slammed its immense body against a section of the log wall. The impact was sickening. The thick wood groaned, and a large section splintered and cracked, creating a gaping hole in the makeshift barrier. Dust and wood fragments rained down. For a heartbeat, the chaos within the arena seemed to freeze. The gorilla, momentarily, paused its attack, its gaze fixed on the newly created opening. The terrified humans, covered in blood and grime, also stared at the breach. A flicker of something akin to hope mixed with their terror. Then, with another powerful surge, the gorilla squeezed through the damaged wall and disappeared into the dense, verdant chaos of the surrounding jungle. The sounds of its powerful movements crashing through the undergrowth echoed back into the stunned arena. The guards, who had been positioned around the perimeter, reacted with a mixture of alarm and confusion. Their weapons, initially trained on the humans, now swung towards the dark line where the gorilla had vanished. Shouts of panicked orders broke the stunned silence. Some guards cautiously ventured into the jungle's edge, cattle prods buzzing uselessly against the thick foliage, while others struggled to secure the gaping hole in the arena wall. Inside the arena, the remaining humans were a broken, bloodied mess. Their initial terror at being confined with the gorilla was now compounded by the horrifying realization that the apex predator was loose in the surrounding jungle, and they were still trapped within the damaged enclosure, vulnerable and exposed. The damaged wall, their potential escape route, was now also the exit through which unimaginable danger could return. A spark of defiance, however, began to flicker amidst the despair. The guards, shaken by the gorilla's unexpected escape, and now divided in their attention between the jungle and the remaining prisoners, seemed less invincible. A collective understanding passed between some of the survivors. Their only chance lay in seizing the moment. It began with a shove, a desperate lunge at a nearby guard, then another and another. The makeshift weapons, sharpened sticks and jagged rocks, were suddenly wielded with a primal fury. The guards, caught off guard by the sudden uprising, struggled to maintain control. Cattle prods buzzed uselessly against determined faces and flail limbs. A brutal, chaotic fight erupted within the blood-soaked arena. The guards, though armed, were outnumbered and hampered by the uneven terrain and the sheer desperation of their attackers. Screams of pain mingled with guttural shouts as humans and guards clashed. Some of the guards fell quickly, overwhelmed by the sheer number of their attackers. Others fought back with grim efficiency, their training giving them a deadly edge. The ground became slick with more blood, a gruesome testament to the ferocity of the struggle. For every guard that fell, several humans also succumbed to gunfire or brutal hand-to-hand combat. But slowly, inexorably, the tide began to turn. The sheer will to survive, the burning resentment against their captors, propelled the humans forward. Finally, with a last, desperate surge, the humans overwhelmed the remaining guards within the arena. The tactical gear, the weapons that had symbolized their power, now lay scattered amongst the fallen. Exhausted, bloodied, and grieving their lost companions, the survivors stood amidst the carnage, the damaged arena now their hard-won, temporary sanctuary. The gaping hole in the wall offered a perilous path to freedom, but also a terrifying reminder of the unseen predator lurking in the jungle beyond. Above, the silent camera drones continued their relentless surveillance, their lenses now recording the aftermath of the human uprising. The bodies of guards and survivors mingled together in the bloody arena. In the remote control center, the expressions on the faces of the unseen audience shifted from detached amusement to something closer to shock and a flicker of anger. What in God's name was that? One of the billionaires, a woman with ice in her voice, snapped, slamming her champagne flute onto a polished table. They were supposed to be the entertainment, not stage a revolt. The one who had chuckled earlier leaned back in his chair, a sardonic smile playing on his lips. A bit of unexpected drama, wouldn't you say, Eleanor? Adds a certain verisimilitude to the proceedings, though admittedly a rather messy deviation from the script. Another, nervously adjusting his tie, interjected, "But the asset, the gorilla, is still out there. Surely the remaining guards can handle whatever is left." A fourth, his eyes glued to the monitors displaying the jungle, scoffed. "Handle it? They couldn't even handle a few dozen terrified peasants with sticks and stones. Let's not overestimate their competence." He gestured to the reinforced steel doors of the control center. "Regardless, we are perfectly safe in here. Let them squabble amongst themselves and the beast. The drones are still operational. We'll see how this new act unfolds." A tense silence settled in the control center. The initial amusement replaced by a grudging fascination and a seed of unease that none of them dared to fully acknowledge. Time stretched, each passing minute thick with a nervous energy. The monitors displayed a chaotic tableau: the bloodied arena, the silent, watchful jungle, the erratic movements of the escaped gorilla as tracked by the drones. The earlier confidence in the control center began to fray at the edges. "The asset's movements are erratic," one of the tech operators murmured, his fingers flying across his keyboard. "It's heading this way, unusually direct." Alistair, the one who had initially questioned the number of humans, paled slightly. "That's not possible, is it? It wouldn't know." "It's an animal, Alistair," Eleanor snapped, though her own composure seemed a little less steely than before. "It's likely just random movement." But the operator's voice held a tremor. "No, ma'am. The thermal imaging, it's consistently moving towards our perimeter, and it's moving fast." A low growl, amplified by one of the external drone microphones, suddenly filled the control room speakers. It was a sound that spoke of primal power and an undeniable intelligence. The sardonic smile vanished from the face of the reclining billionaire. He sat up abruptly, his eyes wide. "Seal the blast doors," he roared. "Security Protocol Delta 9. The heavy steel doors at the main entrance of the control room hissed shut with a resounding thud, thick locking bolts sliding into place. A collective sigh of relief, however brief, swept through the room. "Remind me again the dosage they administered?" Alistair asked, his voice trembling slightly. Surely nothing that could. The sardonic billionaire cut him off, a cruel glint in his eyes. "Enough to make a docile herbivore tear through steel if we asked it to. Which, in a manner of speaking, we have. Keeps things lively." A chillingly unconcerned chuckle rippled through a few of the occupants. The external security feeds showed nothing but the dense jungle. But the low growls, now closer and more agitated, continued to emanate from the speakers. Then came a series of heavy thuds against the reinforced door, each impact sending vibrations through the floor. "It's at the main entrance," the tech operator stammered, his eyes glued to a monitor displaying a distorted thermal image pressed against the steel. "The heat signature is immense." The thuds against the door grew more insistent, punctuated by enraged roars that echoed through the control room despite the thick steel. The sophisticated monitoring equipment registered increasing stress levels on the door's locking mechanisms. Red warning lights began to flash on the security panel. "The integrity! It's failing!" another operator shouted, his voice laced with panic. A high-pitched screech of tearing metal filled the room as the heavy bolts began to shear. The reinforced steel door, designed to withstand explosions, buckled inward with terrifying force. A sliver of darkness appeared at the top, widening rapidly as immense power ripped through the metal. Then, with a final deafening crash, the door was torn from its hinges, twisting inward to reveal the monstrous, enraged face of the silverback gorilla. Its eyes, burning with a terrifying intelligence and a clear intent, locked onto the petrified figures in the control room. The air filled with its furious roar and the stench of its primal power. The screams that followed were short-lived. As dawn painted the jungle sky in hues of orange and gold, a lone figure emerged from the ravaged control center. The massive silverback gorilla stood amidst the wreckage, its silhouette a powerful testament to the primal forces that had been so carelessly unleashed. A low guttural roar echoed across the island, a sound that spoke of survival, vengeance, and the terrifying price of cruelty. The game was over.